Verses 10 to 13. We have here Paul's defense of himself, in answer to Tertullus's charge, and there appears in it a great deal of the spirit of wisdom and holiness, and an accomplishment of Christ's promise to his followers that when they were before governors and kings, for his sake, it should be given them in that same hour what they should speak. Though Tertullus had said a great many provoking things, yet Paul did not interrupt him, but let him go on to the end of his speech, according to the rules of decency and the method in courts of justice, that the plaintiff be allowed to finish his evidence before the defendant begins his plea. And when he had done, he did not presently fly out into passionate exclamations against the iniquity of the times and the men, O tempora! O mores! O the degeneracy of the times! But he waited for a permission from the judge to speak in his turn, and had it. The governor beckoned to him to speak. And now he also may have leave to speak out, under the protection of the governor, which was more than he could hitherto obtain. And, when he did speak, he made no reflections at all upon Tertullus, who he knew spoke for his fee, and therefore despised what he said, and levelled his defence against those that employed him. And here he addressed himself very respectfully to the governor, and with a confidence that he would do him justice. Here are not such flattering compliments as Tertullus soothed him up with, but, which was more truly respectful, a profession that he answered for himself cheerfully, and with good assurance before him, looking upon him, though not as one that was his friend, yet as one that would be fair and impartial. He thus expresses his expectation that he would be so, to engage him to be so. It was likewise the language of one that was conscious to himself of his own integrity, and whose heart did not reproach him, whoever did. He did not stand trembling at the bar, on the contrary, he was very cheerful when he had one to be his judge that was not a party, but an indifferent person. Nay, when he considers who his judge is, he answers the more cheerfully, and why so? He does not say, because I know thee to be a judge of inflexible justice and integrity, that hatest bribes, and in giving judgment fearest God, and regardest not man, for he could not justly say this of him, and therefore would not say it, though it were to gain his favor ever so much, but, I the more cheerfully answer from myself, because I know thou hast been many years a judge to this nation, and this was very true, and being so, he could say of his own knowledge that there had not formerly been any complaints against Paul. Such clamors as they raised are generally against old offenders, but, though he had long say judge there, he never had Paul brought before him till now, and therefore he was not so dangerous a criminal as he was represented to be. He was well acquainted with the Jewish nation, and with their temper and spirit. He knew how bigoted they were to their own way, what furious zealots they were against all that did not comply with them, how peevish and perverse they generally were, and therefore would make allowances for that in their accusation of him, and not regard that which he had reason to think came so much from part malice. Though he did not know him, he knew his prosecutors, and by this might guess what manner of man he was. He denies the facts that he was charged with, upon which their character of him was grounded. Moving sedition, and profaning the temple, were the crimes for which he stood indicted, crimes which they knew the Roman governors were not accustomed to inquire into, and therefore they hoped that the governor would return him back to them to be judged by their law, and this was all they wished for. But Paul desires that though he would not inquire into the crimes, he would protect one that was unjustly charged with them from those whom he knew to be spiteful and ill-natured enough. Now he would have him to understand, and what he said he was ready, if required, to make out by witnesses. That he came up to Jerusalem on purpose to worship God in peace and holiness, so far was he from any design to move sedition among the people or to profane the temple. He came to keep up his communion with the Jews, not to put any affront upon them. That it was but 12 days since he came up to Jerusalem, and he came up to Jerusalem, and he had been 6 days a prisoner, he was alone, and it could not be supposed that in so short a time he could do the mischief they charged upon him. And, as for what he had done in other countries, they knew nothing of it but by uncertain report, by which the matter was very unfairly represented. That he had demeaned himself at Jerusalem very quietly and peaceably, and had made no manner of stir. If it had been true, as they alleged, that he was a mover of sedition among all the Jews, surely he would have been industrious to make a party at Jerusalem, but he did not do so. He was in the temple, attending the public service there. He was in the synagogues where the law was read and opened. He went about in the city among his relations and friends, and conversed freely in the places of concourse, and he was a man of a great genius and an active spirit, and yet they could not charge him with offering anything either against the faith or against the peace of the Jewish church. He had nothing in him of a contradicting spirit, as the movers of sedition have. He had no disposition to quarrel or oppose. They never found him disputing with any man, either affronting the learned with captious cavils or perplexing the weak and simple with curious subtleties. He was ready, if asked, to give a reason of his own hope, and to give instruction to others, but he never picked a quarrel with any man about his religion, nor made that the subject of debate and controversy and perverse dispute, which ought always to be treated of with humility and reverence, with meekness and love. He had nothing in him of a turbulent spirit. They never found me raising up the people, by incensing them against their governors in church or state or suggesting to them fears and jealousies concerning public affairs, nor by setting them at variance one with another or sowing discord among them. He behaved as became a Christian and minister, with love and quietness, and due subjection to lawful authority. The weapons of his warfare were not carnal, not did he ever mention or think of such a thing as taking up arms for the propagating of the gospel or the defense of the preachers of it, though he could have made, perhaps, as strong a party among the common people as his adversaries, yet he never attempted it. That as to what they had charged him with, of moving sedition in other countries, he was wholly innocent, and they could not make good the charge. v. 13 Neither can the prove the things whereof the now accuse me. Hereby he maintains his own innocency, for when he says, they cannot prove it, he means, the matter is not so. He was no enemy to the public peace, he had done no real prejudice, but a great deal of real service, and would gladly have done more, to the nation of the Jews. He was so far from having any antipathy to them that he had the strongest affection imaginable for them, and a most passionate desire for their welfare. He bemoans his own calamity, that he was accused of those things which could not be proved against him. And it has often been the lot of very worthy good men to be thus injured, to have things laid to their charge which they are the greatest distance from and abhor the though of. But, while they are lamenting this calamity, this may be their rejoicing, even the testimony of their consciences concerning their integrity. He shows the iniquity of his prosecutors, who said that which they knew they could not prove, and thereby did him wrong in his name, liberty, and life, and did the judge wrong too, in imposing upon him, and doing what in them lay to pervert his judgment. He appeals to the equity of his judge, and awakens him to look about him, that he might not be drawn into a snare by the violence of the prosecution. The judge must give sentence secundum allegata et probit according to that which is not only alleged but proved, and therefore must inquire, and search, and ask diligently, whether the thing be true and certain. Do 13:14. He cannot otherwise give a right judgment. He gives a fair and just account of himself, which does at once both clear him from crime and likewise intimate what was the true reason of their violence in prosecuting him.